Welcome to the introduction of Module 3 titled Linking Human Resources to a Return on Investment. In the previous module we took a deeper dive in workforce planning, and we did it in the first lesson in a very practical way by looking at some Excel functionalities that you can use to report, to visualize and to order your data. And while doing it, we also took a brief look at how to do succession management in a very data-driven way, by looking at who are your high potentials, and by using that data to make a roadmap for future succession issues. In the second lesson, we created a workforce map. We looked at the HR dashboard. And I hope you rode along, because the lessons that you'll learn and the ideas that you got in that specific lesson will help you in the final modules about Power BI. And finally, we took a look at scenario analysis. You learn the different steps that you need to go through when you engage in scenario analysis. You learn that you need to focus on the scenarios with the most impact and the highest degree of uncertainty, because they are the drivers of your future. And by mapping them onto axes, you can create a number of different scenarios. You can describe how those different futures, those imaginable futures would look like, and which actions you can take with your workforce in order to anticipate and to rapidly react to those scenarios. And doing scenario analysis, it's a really fun and challenging exercise, and by doing so you can prepare yourself for events that will have a high impact for your organization. In this module we're going to talk about financial HR. In the first lesson we'll take a look at how to calculate a return on investment for HR intervention and policies. We'll also take a look at how to calculate a payback period, because sometimes you can have an intervention with a positive return on investment, it will pay itself back, but it can take years and years and years before it will pay itself back, and that's why we also look at the payback period in that same lesson. In the second lesson we'll take a look at how you can calculate the cost of absenteeism, and we'll discuss two methods of doing that which are quite similar, but they take a slightly different approach in calculating it. And in the course material we'll also refer to how to calculate the cost of employee turnover, because depending on the country where you live in and the organization where you're from, either absenteeism is a problem or high turnover is a problem. And sometimes they're both a problem, and in that case you can use them both. In the third lesson you'll learn how to calculate the utility of different selection procedures. I don't know if you've ever seen a bad hire, but if you've ever hired a bad hire, that will cost your organization a lot of money. And by calculating the utility of selection procedures, you can see, hey, if I pay 1,000 or 2,000 euros extra for this expensive assessment, will that actually help me in getting a better return on investment out of my workforce? The third lesson will involve calculating some different ratios. And by doing those calculations and using a calculator online, you can see whether you have a positive return on investment, which refers to the first lesson, whether you have a positive return on investment when you implement certain additional selection procedures for your workforce. One other thing that I don't mention explicitly in the third module, but that is really important to keep in the back of your mind, is that when we talked about strategic workforce planning, we talked about following the organizational strategy by implementing certain workforce policies. So in the first and the second module, HR followed the organizational strategy. Now HR in itself is also strategical. This module will help you come up with different HR interventions that add value to the organization. So this turns the strategic model almost upside down. It says, hey, in HR we can come up with policies that will reshape and refine strategy. And that's important to keep in the back of your mind, because the calculations that you do and the analyzing of the workforce that you begin with, for example, if you have a very costly turnover or absenteeism problem, the interventions that you come up with and the positive return on investment for those interventions will shape organizational strategy in those areas. In other words, in this module, we're going to take the calculator and we're going to see, hey, can we change things in our policies and our strategies that will save us money and that will benefit the workforce. So this is HR in the driver's seat, driving strategy. I would say enjoy, and I'll see you in lesson 1.